Okay, so this is the Investor Hot Seat with Arkady Kulik here. Thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. I'd love for you to just give everyone a little summary about the sorts of things that you invest in and what you look for and who you are and all that sort of good stuff.
Dave, thanks a lot for the invitation. Pleasure to be here today. We invest in pre-seed deep tech, physics-enabled pre-seed deep tech to be precise. So everything from neuroscience to energy to photonics and advanced computing, materials and manufacturing. Anything that is enabled by the mother of all sciences, physics.
So what about space stuff?
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
Space is a very interesting area, 100%.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love that. I'm working with someone at the moment in that space, so that's in the space. But yeah, so I'm just going to ask you a few kind of questions
Go
that
ahead.
are sort of on the tips of most founders' tongues, and just trying to bridge the gap between founders and investors, because it seems to me that often you guys speak different languages, and I'm trying to like be the one that's not bridging it a lot of the time. But so sort of not understand what you're looking for, but what's like the very best first approach that you like to get? What typically, how do typically people reach out to you? What do you like? What do you don't like? Has there been anything unusual that's piqued your interest? Or, let's talk about that initial approach.
We have multiple different channels of sourcing. Some founders would reach out to us directly and would find us through the LinkedIn or through email, and that's okay. A lot of the founders will reach out to us via other VCs or advisors or LPs of my fund. We do a lot of proactive work, so we look for the specific founders in the specific niches and industries. We build relationships with associations such as Brain Mind, for example, and Brain Angels, which have a lot of their own proprietary deal flow. And of course, all of the partnerships within the VC ecosystem, within the networks of our VCs. We also sometimes get referrals from the scientists because we're deeply scientific. And it happens when we would find a company and we think it's an interesting technology, we reach out to the scientists and they're like, yeah, this is not the best approach, but have a look at that. And that's how we have discovered a couple of really interesting companies in our portfolio.
Okay, interesting. So you actually do some active outreach yourself. I mean, I'm
Of
guessing, but
course,
do you get a lot of inbound inquiries?
we're getting inbound inquiries, of course. The problem with them is that they're all over the place. For example, we don't invest in software, and roughly a third of what we get is blockchain related software. So
Mm,
we just automatically pass on those.
mm.
And inbound can be fantastic. One of our lovely companies, 3E8, was an inbound, and we really like them. And I think that the founders, Casey and Cassie, are very talented. They have really unlocked something about 3D printing of metals. Majority of the deals that we see do not come from inbound channel.
Okay, so what was it about that particular inbound inquiry that piqued your interest? How did they initially approach you? Was it straight in there with a pitch deck, or was it getting to know you, or what? Is there any sort of lessons that you can teach?
The form doesn't matter to me. There is only one thing which I think is really bad form, and that is like an email that starts, "Hey," and then it goes into explanation. Like when you don't even know my name, or you don't even care enough to find one of those super cheap mail mergers that will fill in my name. I'm not talking about don't do it manually, okay? But find a mail merger and populate emails of all the investors you reach out to, so it doesn't feel like some absolutely lazy attempt at outreach. This is the only thing that I would probably ignore on the forum itself. But if it's an email that says, "Hey Arkady," and then it goes into explanation of what they do, I couldn't care less about deeper personalization and things of like, "Oh, I've read your post on LinkedIn, blah blah blah." I ignore that stuff. What I care about is the quality of the company and the quality of the value proposition that they have. What kind of problem do they solve? How they solve it, etc.
Yeah, but you're talking about that you want the very first thing that's important is that they reach out to you because they are a physics-based company, right? They actually meet your criteria.
Yeah, but that is a fair advice for anybody, right? Do your research.
Mm.
Before you reach out to any investors, whether you're a founder who looks for VC money or you're a fund manager who looks for LP money, you should know who you're reaching out to. Do your research. And it's not about increasing the probability of sales. It's about being smart with your time.
Yeah.
Because if I reached out to somebody who is completely out of my criteria, right? Or I'm out of their criteria, then it's a waste of time for everybody. If I reach out to somebody who is maybe a good fit, then it's hours and hours of conversations that might never materialize in an investment. If I reach out to somebody who I know for sure likes what we do, understands what we do, has the same values, has the same outlook on the world, then with a very high probability, within 1 or 2 hours, we're going to have a deal. So it's about efficiency. It's about understanding who you talk to, why they might be interested in talking to you. So do your research. If you spend half an hour just internet stalking somebody, reading what they wrote, listening to their podcast, understanding what they're doing, what they have done so far, you're going to save yourself hours and hours of time per investor. And you most likely will have a much better conversion rate than average industry conversion rate. So yeah, do your research basically.
Yeah. That you've kind of answered what I was going to ask next, which is, what are the best places to research then? Is a LinkedIn profile enough, or is it more go a bit deeper with a Google search and, like you said, with some of those podcasts and stuff like that?
It depends, right? You should be looking for very clean green or red flags. So if the person, like us, we say we don't invest in software. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, it says neuro, photonics, energy. What in these three words make you think that I'm going to invest in the next DAO or blockchain company? Nothing. And in many of my interviews, I've also said that we never do software companies. So anyone who spent 30 seconds looking at my profile and 2 minutes with ChatGPT, like, hey, Google this guy, tell me what he invests in. And ChatGPT will tell you what I invest in. It's at that stage today, with such a cheap intelligence as any AI tools that we have accessible, or Perplexity, whatever the tool you're going to use, you're going to have a very easy time to just looking it up. For example, whenever I meet with somebody, even if it is a referral, even if it is an introduction by a friend, I would still go online and ask ChatGPT to give me a download of who that person is. Because I want to understand what they care about. I want to understand if there is something to be done together. And if there is nothing, perfect. I've just saved myself some time and them some time as well. But if there is something to be done, I want to understand what I want to talk to this person about. Is that person interested in long duration energy storage, or maybe angel investment, or maybe the novel theory of consciousness? I want to make sure that whenever I have the conversation with that person, we have common topics to discuss.
Yeah. Okay. And then after that initial approach, you thought, okay, they're a good fit. Um, is the next natural phase to read the pitch deck?
No, it was like that, but not anymore.
Okay.
We have AI agents that do that for us,
Okay.
and they
Talk
they
about those.
go. Well, we've built several agents in-house for our own fund that use all the O1 and 4O models and all of that stuff. They are going through the pitch deck, through the LinkedIn, through Google Scholar, through all of the sources of different data, and it compiles all the information that I really need from the deck in a simple, easy to understand format that we use to make a decision in the future. So instead of like every single partner in our firm going and reading through the deck, we have one true source of data where everybody reads exactly what they need to know about these people. And if we need, sometimes we're going to go look into the deck as well, but not anymore. That's not something we do often.
Okay. So does the founder submit that document to your application process, and that application process
No,
puts it through the AI? How does it work?
we get any kind of, like, usually we just get a deck
Mm.
from the founder, and then our AI goes and does all the hard work. Our founders don't have to submit any specific forms or anything like that.
Okay. And so,
Dave, being an entrepreneur myself, and that's going to be a recurring topic on the call today, as it seems, I value time the most.
mm,
And if if I can save the founder another 10 or 15 minutes or another half hour on populating some long ass type form, I'm gonna do that. Just like, yeah, I know I have your deck. I've read your deck. We've done our own internet stalking. We know who you are, what your profile is on LinkedIn, what kind of scientific papers you've published on Google Scholar. We understand everything about your background. And then whenever I join them for the first call, I have a set of very specific codified questions that I ask them. And
Okay.
all of those questions are focused on making sure that we can be a good fit. So I'm going through the filters essentially initially, and that is what's important. That's how I save a lot of time. I had calls with founders, which were like 3 minutes. I would ask a couple of questions, and they would be like, say, our valuation is X, and I'm like, that's outside of bounds for our investment strategy. Thank you very much. I'm gonna introduce you to a couple of other VCs, but I'm out. Not because there is something wrong with you, just because you're outside of bounds.
Hmm.
Or I would meet somebody and I would ask them about IP or technology that they have, and they say, we have no patents, we have no proprietary technology. We just took a couple of things off the shelf and tried to repackage that. I'm like, cool, that's not a good fit for me. But nothing wrong with your business. It might be a successful company, just
Yep.
not a good fit for what I'm doing.
Okay, but that comes through on the call, not necessarily from the information you get from your AI agent
Yeah,
software.
usually these kind of things come on the call. People rarely put information on their evaluation patents into their decks. Sometimes they do, very rarely.
Okay, and that was actually one of the things I was going to ask you. What things, if you are to get the deck, or if your AI looks at the deck, what are the things that are commonly missed? You're saying that that information on patents is one, is it?
I wouldn't specify it as missed, Dave. I think that founders write exactly what they want to write,
Mm.
and the founders show exactly what they want to show. And I do not like there is no judgment on my side whether it's missed or not, whether it should be there or not. I'm completely fine with whatever they want to share, as long as it actually tells me a lot on what they say and what they don't say.
Okay.
I think it's a good, silence is as telling as words.
Okay, let's talk about the things that people don't say then. Like what is it that if you're why are they does it raise a red flag why they're not saying it, or is it just that they don't have information, or you prefer if there's nothing, if there's no sort of traction or sales, then you don't need to talk about traction and sales?
Well, there were like traction and sales. We invested pre-seed deep tech. They're not
Mm.
really important at that stage. They
Mm.
become important later on, but they're not really something that we focus on or over-index on initially. The, the things that are red flags to us are very peculiar red flags specific to our firm.
Okay.
They are not about whether some information is missing or whether the founder knows something or not. It's more about the things that we are specifically looking for.
Mm.
So we're looking for product breakthroughs. If you have improved something by 30%, it's a cool achievement, but it's not interesting for us. We're looking for things that are 10 times better, 100 times better, 1,000 times better. Those are the things that really are interesting to us. We're also looking for things that are built on solid science. So if it is some kind of I just had a conversation like that a couple of days ago with a guy is building, who's building a tool. I'm not going to go into any specifics. Who's building a tool that should increase personal efficiency. And I'm like, okay, but can you explain to me? You've got all of those different elements to this tool, the monitoring elements, the provoking elements, and things of that nature. Can you tell me what tool attributes how much to the efficiency of your overall product? Can you explain to me the mechanisms of how the person who is using your product is getting better at the task at hand? And when people don't know these details, when they don't understand deep the science behind it, that is a red flag for us. But it shouldn't be a red flag for everybody else. It's just our fund is very specific on these things.
Okay, so I was guessing that the bar for evidence on your side for your deck. So I was always talking about evidence and stats and things like that, but things that you can't, you can't spin the numbers, you can't spin the stats and the percentages and stuff like that. But that's rated extremely highly
Yeah, absolutely.
with you guys. And how how do you kind of verify all that? Is that based on, scientific papers or the people behind it, or what sort of criteria do you put on valuing that, and how do you test that?
You're absolutely right. It is built on scientific papers. It is built on the profile of people who wrote them. It
Yeah.
is built on what else exists in that realm of research.
Yeah.
It is built on how much do we believe that that approach is right. So long duration energy storage is a big field with all the different players like flywheels and gravitation and heat storage and traditional lithium ion batteries and sodium ion batteries and this and that. And all of those different like heat capacitors. Like there are so many different ways to store energy. I just don't believe that all of them are applicable everywhere. If you look at, say, UK, there is a lot of potential for gravitational storage because there are lots of abandoned mines. And all you need for gravitational storage is a long kind of elevator shaft. That's all you care about. And this is gonna work there, but it's not gonna work in the US, or it's not gonna work in some other countries that don't have this pre-existing infrastructure because the costs of building such a system are going to make it economically unviable. And
Mm.
so on and so forth. So we want to understand the context around it. We want to understand the real life context around it, the scientific context around it, and then we want to understand how unique that research that that team has done is compared to all the context that we've talked about.
Mm. Okay. So how much emphasis when you read the deck or you get the information back for you guys is the individual members of the team, and how should they kind of write about themselves? What should they write about? What should they admit? What should they put in terms of the team? Because I know in the UK, a lot of us have we don't like to blow our own trumpets. We're kind of too humble for our own good a lot of the time, And I keep telling my founders, like, you've got to. Sometimes things come out that's like, oh my God, what an achievement, and they're not talking about it. So, what sort of things do you like to see?
Again, this is very personal and
Yep.
idiosyncratic that time for me personally, not just the fund. I don't care much about the achievements in the past,
Okay.
whether I'm talking about myself or people that I'm seeing.
Mm.
The what is the saying? The history is not a good predictor. Well, the idea is that whatever you achieved in the past does not necessarily mean that you can A, repeat that achievement right now, and B, that you can achieve something in a different area.
Yep.
So I don't care about the past. I barely look. Like if you ask me, if you point at any given company and ask me to tell me where the founders worked before this company, it's going to be a big head scratcher for me. I might recall a couple of people, but I'm absolutely sure that I will not be able to tell you all the names of all the companies that my founders worked in before. I couldn't care less about that. What I care about is that the founder is solving a problem that they deeply relate to.
Okay.
I care about the founders who found an insight into the company, and not into the industry, into how they can do it better than the next guy. I care about intellectual honesty, especially with themselves. So a lot of the founders, we just recently passed on one of the guys like that. A lot of the founders are lying to themselves, and you can see that. You ask them a question, and you have all of these microfacial expressions, and then he shapes up and he tells you what he was going to say in this, and in the response to that question, he's so tense, and you're like, and you start poking a little bit deeper, and you see how all of this history, that the narrative that he's telling himself about who he is just that. It's a narrative of ego. It's not true. It has nothing to do with reality. It's just, he wants desperately to be something, and he's not that. And intellectual honesty is important. The most important thing to me is what has driven that person to fix that problem. The issue with the founders, especially young founders, is their ability to persevere through the hardships of entrepreneurship. A lot of them think that, it's an easy road, we're just going to go and get this done. And they might, but inevitably they will face some hardships. Inevitably, there is no way around it. And the problem with that is when the founders are young, they have no idea how hard it's going to get. And I need to understand why they do what they do to the deep core level of their being, of their self. And if I don't see that they do it for the right reason, if I see that they do it for the sake of status or cash, or, I was talking to somebody like a year ago, and I asked her, why do you want to be an entrepreneur? And she's like, because all of my friends are. I'm like, pass, immediately, done. That is not the person who's going to be an entrepreneur. That is a person who's going to play an entrepreneur role for a while, and then, a next fad will come and she will transition to that artist or whatever. So the inner motivation is probably the most important thing to me.
Is that based on making mistakes in the past, and is that gut feeling? How do you learn that? It seems very instinctual what you're talking about there. You're talking about people's deep down personality and making sort of judgments on them based on.
No, Dave, you ask a couple of questions. You ask things like,
Hmm,
once your company is successful, what changes in your life? And you listen to what they talk about.
okay.
You ask them, if you had $1 billion in your pocket right now, today, what would you do differently? You ask them, you kind of remove the constraints for the sake of the thought experiment, and you ask them to behave as if they already were successful. And you're looking for an honest answer. You're looking for an honest answer internally and externally as well.
And how do you know that you're getting the honest answers then?
This is purely instinctual. This is purely a look in the eye, the body language and things of that nature.
Mm.
This is just an experience, and you need to get experienced in these areas. And that's what VCing is about, right? You need to really, really understand people well.
Yeah, it's very interesting because you're talking about really understanding someone at a deep psychological level, and you're
Mhm.
actually not basing it on, you're basing it on the moment and who that person is, and it's so much about that you want to back the person, and you know if that person's right or not, and you know if they're doing it for the right reasons or not, and that comes through on the interview. Does it ever come through in the pitch deck or in any other materials or
No,
profiles? It has to
no.
come through from a one-to-one.
Yeah, I try to meet every single founder in person. I even flew to Paris once just to meet the guy.
Wow.
And this
Okay.
is like, it's not about cash. It's just a long ass flight. It's
Yeah.
14 hours from San Francisco.
I've flown to
Um,
San Francisco, and it took me as long to get from UK to the one coast of America, and then all the way across was the same amount of
exactly,
time, like to
exactly.
get to San Fran. Yeah,
It's a long flight.
it's long.
The personal maturity is a big factor in the success of a company. If the CEO or the founder are not mature enough, they are going to dig themselves a hole. The value system, why the person is doing something, is very important. I can, I can ignore certain peculiarities of their style, communication, preferences, etc., how they dress and how they talk. I can care less about that. I need to understand that the founder will be able to go through the hardships that he will face, which he will face inevitably. And I need to be clear that the founder is doing it because of the right motivation.
So those right motivations are that they want to build a company that's going to change the world. Is that correct?
No, no, not necessarily.
Okay. Is it personal stories? Tell me
I understand.
what
I
feels.
understand your question. I'm
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
to
Sure.
think
Sure.
through that. I wouldn't say that there are many very clear cases of the right motivation. I would say there are many very clear cases of the wrong motivation, and those should not be present.
Hmm.
Very often, the right motivation would be a person who is trying to solve a problem, whether it's the childhood story, whether it's, if we talk about neuroscience, some health issues in their family, whether it's, some aspirations because they read a book when they were a kid and they want to do something like that, or whatever is the background of that matters less. what matters is that they are actually trying to solve a problem. They see that something is wrong with the world and they want to fix it. Not necessarily make the world a better place. That's such a cliche. And then again, like, do you think with social media made the world a better place? In some aspects, for sure.
Mm.
In some aspects, definitely not. Right? And or internet. Do you think that internet is net negative or net positive? Probably net positive. Has it done a lot of damage? Definitely yes. And so on and so forth. Nuclear energy, nuclear weapons. Like technology is a double-edged sword,
Yep.
and you can always build the case that it damaged people. You can always build the case that it made life better. The issue is less about judging, like passing a moral value judgment, like, oh, you made a good job, like you made it better. The issue is more about, does the founder have a fallback motivation system when things get really tough, when they run out of cash, when they're tired, when nothing goes their way, clients don't pick up the phone, investors don't invest the money, their team is feeling demotivated. Do they wake up every morning thinking about their business? Or do they wake up every morning thinking about a million other things? And then we're like, oh my God, I have to go and do something for my business. So this is about that.
Yep.
That's why I prefaced it with the fact that it's more important for young founders. I met somebody yesterday. I'm not going to ask this person any questions like that. Successful exited founder in his late 40s. I am for sure, I am sure that A, he's aware of the hardships he's gonna face. B, he has selected an opportunity that he thinks it's a really good opportunity and it works for him. And C, he's not gonna give up. My big question is, do I feel in my heart that that entrepreneur is going to give up once Mrs. Fan would be introduced to Mr. Shit?
Which it inevitably is for every single company. You'd be very lucky if it isn't.
Every time, yes.
Okay. And have you got it wrong with people? Have you thought this person will definitely be able to cope and they've quit?
Of course. So many
And did
times, Dave, in my life.
and what happened then? Did you manage to pick them up? Did the business fail or was it okay? Or
No, I'm not talking about any venture companies of ours yet, any portfolio companies. We've started investing last year. We don't have any deaths in our portfolio yet, so I wouldn't know that.
Hmm.
But have I hired the wrong people when I was an entrepreneur myself? Of course. Have I partnered with the wrong people? Yes. Have I had clients which were trying to not pay me money and do all of this shady stuff? Of course. Like, have I been mistaken in people? So many times. Have I had a relationship with women that could be described as toxic? Yes, of course. Like, we all make mistakes. That's how you get this experience. That's how you get this instinct that you were talking about in evaluating their answers.
Yeah, and I'm guessing you're using all of that knowledge. And I'm just surprised, like, it's interesting that this turned into a kind of psychology interview, but whereas like we're talking about investments and people thinking, oh well, pitch decks and finances and numbers and all this, and the conversation's been about, is this founder right? Is this relationship right?
Yeah. One of the biggest reasons we pass, we have in our CRM, we have the decision reason. One of the biggest reasons we pass if we met the founder, right? Like, initially, we can pass because it's not a good fit, no science, etc. But if we met the founder, one of the biggest reasons we pass is founder market fit or lack thereof. When we think that this particular founder in that particular market have nothing in common, like why would the person be doing that?
Mm. Okay, so on the flip side of that, which companies at the moment, I don't know if you can talk about them, but is there any particular ventures that you've backed that you're immensely proud of that have done some incredible things since you've helped them to?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I would highlight two of them.
Mm.
One of them we talked about before, 3E8, Studio 3E8, Casey Johnson and Cassie Lowell. They are building the new approach to 3D printing metals,
Hmm.
and I think it's remarkably smart what they do. It really is fantastic. I'm not at leisure to disclose any technical details yet, but I can tell you that it is safe and it is orders of magnitude cheaper than existing solutions. We have we have involved really serious people in their deep tech due diligence,
Mm.
And some of them were so impressed that they actually tried to poach them from MIT. I was like, don't do that again, please, or we will not come back to you with our next request about the due diligence. But they were like really impressive. Another company that is that is just impressing me every time I talk to them is BIOS. BIOS has built the way to create two-way feedback prosthetics that work as fast as a natural limb and that act in all the degrees of freedom and naturally controlled. So within 10 minutes of putting this prosthetics on the person can start using their hand as if it was their own arm. And right now they can also have a two-way feedback of a sense of touch, natural sense of touch. So the person would understand that they're, holding something or holding it too tight or not tight enough. They will know it. All of the other sensations, such as cold and hot, wet and dry, rough and smooth, will come later, and they might need deeper sensors, but they already have the sensation of touch. So we have seen this video, a person who has lost his arm a while ago is holding his phone, and he's like, what's going on? And like he can feel the phone, and then he takes his wife's hands, and he cries, his wife cries, everybody in the lab cries. So everybody's like, oh my God, that's such a moment. These guys are amazing. So not only they're building something straight out of the Cyberpunk 2077 game or whatever piece of science fiction you want to use here, the thing that also impresses me about them is how well they work with FDA and how they got the certain approvals 6 to 7 times faster than expected, how they got into the TAP program, which is completely brand new. The execution level on this team is amazing. The investor interest that we see is coming from one of the highest profile investors in the market. So I'm very excited about this company as well. I
Mm.
think that they can redefine what it means to be a human being, let alone redefine a specific industry. Because if you can, they're telling me that they can easily add a sixth finger to your arm or add two more arms to your chest, and
I
you
saw
will
something.
have multiple limbs.
I saw something where there was like an extra thumb. I don't know, that popped up on my LinkedIn one time. I don't know if it's the same company, but that was really crazy. Yeah. What was it about when you met that founder? Was there a personal story there or from the team that resonated with you?
Yes, the moment I met them with this specific company, what really piqued my interest was the technology, and I was like, yeah, that sounds too good to be true. I'm not sure
Mm.
that this is real. Then we did a deep due diligence because this this technology carried some emotional weight for me.
Okay.
And Neuromancer being my favorite book, I was like, okay, if I have this level of emotional engagement, I should back out. I should just excuse myself. And I completely backed out of the process, and I allowed other people to work with them. And only after they said, yes, the technology checks out, it all seems to be real. Then I had a long and deep conversation about why this founder does what he does, what drives them. And yes, Josh has clearly the right motivations. He's definitely trying to solve the problem that is deep and dear to his heart. He has all the right skill sets to do that, and he can definitely go through the hardships of entrepreneurship that will be thrown his way. There is not so much of a personal story, more so of
Mm.
value alignment that he and I have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I kind of coming to the end of it. It's been a really, really interesting chat. It's gone in a different direction that I expected, which is brilliant. I love that. So, I just remain to say thank you so much, and yeah,
Anytime, Dave.
hope to connect with you again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for hosting me today. Have a
Thanks so
beautiful
much.
evening.
Cheers.